everyone, in today's video I am going to teach you how to get started with an open hole flute. Probably if you're watching this video you had a student model flute with closed holes and then you upgraded to another more advanced flute that has open holes. So as you can see from this flute here, there are 5 keys that have holes in them, and we'll go into why that is in just a second. But there are different ways to learn how to play an open hole flute, so I'm not saying my way is the only way or the right way, but in my experience both learning in this particular way myself as well as teaching a lot of students in this way, I think it's the easiest way to transition from a closed hole flute to an open hole flute. Before we get started, I did want to remind you about my perks that I have for you at the Flute Center of New York. If you are flute shopping, you can use my code Gina at the Flute Center of New York's website and you will get free shipping, an extended trial, as well as an extended warranty. I did also want to mention I have a new perk for you guys. If you are wanting to consign your flute with the Flute Center, aka selling your flute through the Flute Center of New York, then you can use my code Gina, just mention it to them, and you will get $25 off of any repairs that need to be done on your instrument before it is sold. So just keep that in mind. If you have any questions, let me know, and I do have an entire video about consigning your flutes with the Flute Center, so make sure to watch that if you're interested. So let's get started on how to play with open holes. Now let's first talk about why there are flutes with open holes. So at a certain point in time, a new flute maker thought, you know what, I'm going to put open holes, and it was, in a way, it was kind of a gimmick as to a selling point for this flute and saying, oh, it sounds so much better. Now, again, there are so many different opinions on this, and some people do believe that it does sound better having your holes open on your flute, and there are other people saying that they don't think it sounds any different. In my personal opinion, I don't think it sounds any different, but the perks of having an open hole flute are 2 for the most part. The first one is tuning. When you get more advanced, you might want to have options that instead of just changing the tuning with your mouth or just making small adjustments. So let's say that we are playing an F and for some reason it is super sharp and we want to lower that. Instead of making the adjustments, what you can do is you can push down the E key but leave the hole open. So going like this, and that will bring down the pitch. So let me demonstrate that for you. Whereas obviously putting down the entire key is going to change it from an F to an E. So that is one perk of having open holes. Another is in a lot of more modern music, they have extended techniques that require different fingerings that sometimes do utilize having open holes. So maybe they have kind of like a glissando sounding thing. So they would do this rather than going and having a hard break to the note. So there are some perks like that, but for the most part with standard music, you are not really going to be using open holes in that way. For today's video, I will be playing the Trevor Virtuoso flute. Again, there are differing opinions on whether or not this does change the sound, but in my opinion, I don't think it changes the sound. So let's get started on what I think is the best way to start with open hole flutes. When you get an open hole flute, you will get a little bag like this with plugs. Okay, so I'm gonna take these out really quickly to show you what they look like close up. So I have 5 little plastic plugs right here. They are really soft, and this is what they look like. And you can also get some metal ones if you would prefer that, if you like the feeling of those, so you can purchase those, but these will come free with your flute. So the way that you insert them is you just take one and you put it where there is a missing cover over your key like this, and what I like to do is have it flush with the key. Some people like to push it in a little bit more. I think it's nice though when it's flush with the key. And you do need to be careful. Most flutes, for the most part, if you want to take them out, all you have to do is you just push it in and it will come out the bottom of the flute. You just go like this and it'll roll out. But the problem is there are certain flutes, usually more advanced flutes, that will actually have a little lip, and if you push it all the way through, it will actually break the key. So you have to be very careful about that, so just read up on your flute just to make sure it doesn't have that lip. If your flute happens to be one of the ones that does have that lip around the key, the way that you remove it is you take a needle and you stick it into the plug and you pull it up. And that's how you remove the plug. This one, though, does not have that. So I'm just gonna put in all of the plugs like this, and we're gonna put them on all 5 of the keys. And while I'm doing this, I'm gonna tell you a little story. So when I was starting with open holes, I did this method that I'm going to teach you in just a second, and I got to the point that I didn't have any of my plugs in at all. So it was completely open holes. So then I was experiencing pain in both my right hand and my left hand because I have really small hands, and it was really hard for me to actually cover the holes completely on my ring fingers, both my left hand and my right hand, and it was causing me a ton of pain. And so I went to my teacher at the time. I was in high school, and I just said, this really hurts my hands. And she said, well, then just put the plugs back in on those two fingers. And I was like, is that okay to do? She said, yes. And so I have not looked back. So since high school, I put those 2 back in, and I still personally, on my flutes, all my flutes that I have, I keep the plugs in for both this finger and this finger. So if you are experiencing any pain, go to a private teacher, talk to them, and have them look at your hand positioning, because it is definitely possible that you might be doing something off that is causing the pain, but it also could just be the placement of these holes and you're not able to cover them completely without straining your hands. I don't want that to happen to you. It's not important enough to have the plugs out. It's much better to be playing without pain than to take out all of the plugs on your flute. So what I like to do is start with removing 1 plug at a time. I think the easiest one is your left hand middle finger right here, so your A key. So like I said before, you just push it in, and I usually put my flute on my leg so that it catches the plug and it doesn't just fall on the floor. Again, remember, if you do have a more advanced flute, just double check that it doesn't have that little lip that it would damage the instrument if you pushed it through. But for this one, you're able to do that. So I just pushed that through. So now I have this one, I have this one removed on the A key. And I have all these plugs in. And the reason that I go one by one is so that you can get used to the placement of that one particular key. And so what I usually do with my students, and what I did as a student myself, is I would do that for about a week to 2 weeks until I felt very comfortable with having that plug removed. Once I got to the point that I was never missing it at all, then I would remove another plug one by one. But let me just play for you what it would sound like if I don't cover that hole completely. So this is an A fully covered, and this is it not fully covered. It sounds sharper, and sometimes it's more noticeable than others, so work with a tuner, but you just have to get really used to where that placement is so that you can hit it every single time. I would highly suggest doing scales, etudes, technical stuff, so that you get really used to where that placement is. And again, once you feel comfortable with that, then you can go on to another finger. So this is, in my opinion, the easiest one to remove. The second easiest one to remove is your right hand pointer finger. So this one right here. So I would pop that one out. And again, I use my leg to catch the plug so it doesn't go rolling on the floor. So now I have 2 of them out. I have this one and my F key. So then you just have to practice with that. The third one that I would remove is, you guessed it, middle finger on the right hand, so your E key. So let's remove that one. And so now we have it to this point right here. So we have our A key, our F key, and our E key. So like I said, these are the 2 plugs that I actually play with, these 2 right here. And it's not a problem if your hands are too small, you can't remove them, that's totally fine. If you feel comfortable enough removing them, that's fine too. You can try removing them, and then if you do feel pain, you can put them back in. There is no rhyme or reason, you can just test things out and see what works best for you. So the next one that I would remove is this one right here. So this is the left hand ring finger. So I'm going to push that out right now. This one's kind of stuck, there we go. Okay, so now we're to this point. We only have 1 left, and the very last one is this one. This is the hardest one, especially, let me tell you where it's especially hard, is when you start doing things on the right hand, reaching over here and hitting like a low B, or even sometimes like C sharp and C. What happens is that your finger will move this way. and it will uncover the hole. So you have to do a lot of work, especially in the right hand on those low notes, and get used to that. And one thing I would mention is that if you have something big coming up, let's say you have a performance or competition or audition or anything like that, do not worry about removing the plugs until after that big event, because that will just kind of make you have to focus on that and not actually on your playing so much. And then you're going to be worried about, like, am I going to cover the holes and is everything going to come out correctly during whatever event it is that you have, rather than let me just play my music correctly. So it's best in that situation, just wait until after that bigger event till you have a little bit more time to get used to practicing without the plugs in your flute. So the very last one, like I said, is this one right here. So we're gonna push that one out. And I'm gonna play a little bit for you. I'm not used to playing without those plugs, both the ring fingers. So I'm gonna play for you, and you're going to hear what it sounds like when I don't cover the holes completely. So let's hear what that sounds like. You hear that squeaky kind of sound? That's because I'm not fully covering this low D key. And that's what you will hear for the most part when you're not fully covering the hole. Let me try it out now with the E key. It's, again, really helpful to work with the tuner for something like this. Let's hear the F. You can hear the slight variation in the sound of the tuning. Here's G. Especially when you're pushing the G sharp key, sometimes that will make your hand go over like this, and then you have a little bit of a gap right here. So just be really careful about doing that. And then A. So those are things to be listening for when you start removing the plugs from your flute. And one little tip for you guys is, if, let's say you're in a pinch, you're somewhere, you don't have your plugs with you, and I would recommend when you are removing them, put them back in this little baggie and put them into your flute case. But let's say you forgot them that day, or you don't have access to that for some reason. What you can do instead, if you are in a pinch, is get a piece of tape. So that can be Scotch tape, that can be electrical tape, and just cut a little tiny piece, and you can put that over the hole. Just make sure that it's covering the hole completely so that it's not moving, and that's what you can do in a pinch. I wouldn't recommend this all the time to be doing that, but if you are in a pinch, that's something you can do. I hope that this video was helpful for you. Just go slow and you will be able to do it, and don't feel the rush and the need to get all of the plugs out right away, because it's definitely not necessary. Although it is, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to remove them. I don't think it's something that you have to worry about doing right away in one sitting as soon as you get an open hole flute. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments, and so that I can help you out. Also, thank you to the Flute Center of New York for making this series possible. Make sure that you're subscribed to my channel so that you don't miss any of my future videos, and follow me on Facebook and Instagram, and I'll see you next time.